Bryson DeChambeau recently did something that's startling, so contentious that the PGA Tour players are completely losing their thoughts behind closed doors. Furthermore, we're not discussing a few small rules disputes or a poorly taken picture that went viral. This is much larger, much more intimate, and way more detrimental to connections that were already barely hanging on. What if Bryson truly does that with the hole? Is the PGA Tour about to blow up? Why are athletes who once referred to him as a friend now declining to acknowledge him at all in their locker rooms? And how did a single choice transform Bryson from a divisive figure into someone that players on the PGA Tour can't bear to be around, really? The responses show a professional side. Golf that no one discusses in public, however, everyone feels deeply behind the scenes. Let's go back in time to see how we arrived. Due to Bryson DeChambeau's connection to the PGA Tour, and its players have always been challenging, tense, and dramatic due to as soon as he became a professional. In 2016, Bryson was unique, not only in his strategy for the game, but throughout his whole persona. He began touring as a physics major from SMU, who regarded golf as a science experiment as opposed to an artistic creation form. Irons with a single length that resisted conventional knowledge, an obsession with strengthening his muscles and speed training body to produce incredible power. A methodical, excruciatingly slow approach to each shot that motivated the playing partners and fans are insanely passionate. However, here's the problem was that Bryson's strategies were effective, and that made it impossible to ignore him or discard. The 2020 US Open was won by him at Winged Foot by utterly dominating one of the hardest courses in golf. He was more than 320 yards off the tee on average and made the competition appear simple when no one else was able to surpass par. He demonstrated that his unusual strategy was revolutionary, but it was also gimmicky. Moreover, that achievement along with his disposition made him one of golf's largest celebrities and most discussed numbers. However, popularity and success with fans did not translate into popularity in the changing era. From the very beginning, Bryson started by making fun of other PGA Tour players in the incorrect manner. There was the slow play problem that gained so much notoriety that other players publicly voiced their displeasure during interviews about it. Koepka Brooks famously rolled his eyes in a 2019 interview as Bryson passed by in the background, an instance that went viral and caused one of the most amusing games of golf. Conflicts. Rory McIlroy made subtle jabs regarding Bryson's style and speed of play. Phil never one to back down. Mickelson made remarks implying that Bryson's overanalyzing the game's approach things and missing golf's essence. Moreover, then there were the minor occurrences that built up over time. Bryson's inclination to place the blame on everything but himself when things didn't work out, grumbling about poor breaks, of course equipment problems, setups, and even his caddy in ways that gave him a petulant appearance and immature. His public conflict with golf Brandel Chambly, a channel analyst, made Bryson appear skinny and incapable of taking criticism. His disputes with the media and cameraman members who established a reputation as someone who is quick and challenging to work with to rage when he didn't get his way. However, despite all of that drama, Bryson remained a member of the PGA Tour. He was continuing to compete in the same events for the identical awards, as well as a portion of the identical ecosystem. Perhaps other players won't have personally liked him, but there was at least a starting point of courtesy and professionalism. They were fighting as members of the same team for the identical tour and constrained by the same code that prevented hostilities from escalating all the way through. Then June arrived. Everything changed irrevocably in 2022. Bryson DeChambeau declared that he was joining Live Eve instead of the PGA Tour Golf, the Saudi-backed upstart league that was destroying the sport. The reported contract was astounding. Thought to be between $125 and $150 million paid, guaranteed, completely honest, regardless of performance or outcomes. Bryson turned into one of LIV's most notable acquisitions, a star they could cite as evidence that the league might draw the top players in the world. Players who are not on the official tour. For players on the PGA Tour, Bryson's departure wasn't just another money-hungry guy. It seemed like a more profound betrayal. compared to the majority of other Live departures, because in contrast to athletes such as Dustin Johnson or Phil Mickelson, who was older and perhaps beyond their prime, Bryson was 28 years old and at the height of his career and leaving the tour that had turned him into a celebrity and a millionaire. He had 8 PGA Tour victories, occasions such as a significant championship. He had won more than $27 million earnings while on tour. He had constructed his whole reputation and brand via the PGA Tour achievement. Additionally, he was now taking all of that legitimacy, all of that star power, and transferring it to a competing league that was making a concerted effort to destroy the PGA Tour. However, this is where things get even more intricate and where the real hostility began to grow. Bryson didn't simply depart silently and courteously. He departed while making remarks that seemed to be direct jabs at the players who remained on the PGA Tour. After joining LI, Bryson participated in interviews, discussed how the PGA Tour schedule was excessively demanding and the tour didn't how should players be treated, improved work-life balance, among other things, reverence for athletes. He set up his choice as defending the player rights and advocating for modifications in positioning himself as a professional golfer as a sort of revolutionary instead rather than just another man who accepted the largest salary. Those remarks were received like grenades in the locker rooms of the PGA Tour. Players who declined to participate in the massive LIV offers to stick with the tour felt insulted and assaulted. Rory McIlroy, who had assumed the role of de facto leader and representative for supporters of the PGA Tour, was especially irritated. He had invested months of publicly defending the tour, opposing the narrative of LIV and coping with the strain and stress of serving as the moral compass for golf during the civil war in sports. And Bryson was here. Someone who had profited greatly from the PGA Tour system, which is currently criticizing that identical system from the convenience of his $125 million contract that is guaranteed. However, there was still some tension. Manageable at that time, Bryson was visited a live. Players on the PGA Tour were irritated and felt deceived, but there was at the very least competitive and physical division of the two groups. They were not participating in the same competitions, weren't coming into contact in the locker rooms, and could largely stay apart, with the exception of for the 4 major titles that both live players and the PGA Tour still competed. Then 2024 arrived, and everything blew up in ways that no one could predict. Anticipated. The US Open was won by Bryson DeChambeau. At Pinehurst number 2 in one of the most striking and dramatic performances throughout the whole year. He grasped off Rory McIlroy in the final moments, making important putts and recuperating from challenging positions as McIlroy melted down and failed to make short putts that would have awarded him his first significant victory in 10 years. It was Bryson's second victory at the US Open, solidifying his status as one of the best in the game players and demonstrating that his decision to his competitiveness had not decreased advantage or his capacity to triumph on golf's largest stages. For players on the PGA Tour, observing Bryson triumph at the US Open was utterly heartbreaking. Not only since he defeated Rory McIlroy, the tour's largest and most noticeable defender loyalist, but because it confirmed Bryson's choice to depart. It demonstrated that you could accept the Saudi funds, play a more relaxed schedule with fewer pressure, yet still be present and in control. At majors, every player on the PGA Tour was made who had declined Lee's offer. I wonder if they had chosen wisely. And it provided Bryson with a forum to discuss his achievement and his contentment with a live-in methods that resembled twisting a knife deeper still. However, winning the US Open wasn't what ultimately led to the PGA Tour players can no longer tolerate Bryson. That was merely fuel for a fire that had been constructing for many years. What actually pushed things to the brink was what in the weeks and months that followed, Bryson that triumph at the US Open. How he managed his newly acquired platform and the choices he gave the impression that it was intentional. Provocations to all those who are still on the PGA Tour. Social media first appeared. Blitz. Bryson, who was always engaged on social media, but frequently in methods that sparked debate and backlash, which abruptly changed into a machine for creating content. He began continuously uploading to YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, constructing a meticulously chosen picture of himself as enjoyable, relatable, ordinary man. Videos showing him striking trick shots, dissecting his US Open triumph in striking detail, working together with influencers and celebrities who were unrelated to professional golf, and the majority of controversially producing material that demonstrated the lifestyle of live golf in methods that seemed like commercials and league recruitment videos. PGA players on the tour observed everything with increasing disgust and annoyance. Here was Bryson earning millions in Saudi Arabia, money, becoming a social media personality, and hardly even acting as though you are concerned about competition golf these days. It seemed as though he was rubbing his success in real life into everyone's faces, showing off the quick cash and laid-back schedule while players on the PGA Tour were working hard every week, attempting to accumulate FedEx Cup points and keep their tour cards. However, that was only the starting. What actually sparked the firestorm was Bryson's choice to publicly denounce the official World Golf Ranking System and how it was being used to prevent LIV players from participating in major titles. Throughout several interviews and posts on social media, Bryson contended that political motivations drove the OWGR, that it was being used as a weapon against unfairly to LIV players, and that the A Major Championship ought to alter their qualifying requirements to incorporate additional LIV players' worldwide ranking. At first glance, that could appear such as rational self-advocacy and his rivals from LIV, but to PGA players on the tour, it seemed like the best hypocrisy. Bryson had departed willingly. OWGR points are awarded by the tour. He had selected guaranteed funds over the competitive framework that the whole sport is based on this. And he was now expressing dissatisfaction over not receiving the same advantages and benefits that come with adhering to the designated tours. It was similar to leaving your work for a rival and then requesting your employer continues to provide health insurance and days off. Rory Mroy, who had Bryson has already irritated me for years, allegedly stated in a private discussion that was subsequently made public that Bryson desires to eat and have his cake. It as well. He desires the assurance of a live money without any repercussions that follow the tour's conclusion. That sentiment that permeated every PGA Tour room for lockers. Players thought Bryson was acting entitled and anticipating special treatment, and refusing to acknowledge that his choice to join LV was motivated by genuine sacrifices and trade-offs. Then came the remarks that truly went beyond the cue for numerous players. During an interview, Bryson proposed a golf podcast. The players on the PGA Tour who remained faithful to the tour members were either afraid of change or not intelligent enough to identify a better chance when it was offered to them. He suggested that continuing to play on the PGA Tour was the simple, safe option, while joining LIV required bravery and vision. He set up himself and other LIV participants as trailblazers and inventors, while quietly implying that the PGA Tour players were holding onto an antiquated system since they didn't have the self-assurance to attempt something new. Those comments exploded like explosives throughout professional golf. Players with rejected enormous LIV offers, especially because they appreciated custom, fidelity, and the PGA Tour's integrity, felt personally insulted and attacked. Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan SBYDH, and numerous other elite athletes who could have accepted large live contracts, but decided to remain, were now being referred to as terrified and uncreative by someone who had stolen the cash and was in dire need of attempting to defend his choice. Additionally, the drama continued to intensify. At the Open in 2024 championship, there were rumors of an intense conversation between Bryson, and there are multiple PGA Tour players in the locker space in the room. Information was kept confidential. However, a number of sources verified that words were spoken, accusations were tossed around, and the tension was so thick that the competition and security authorities had to step in to stop things from becoming tangible. According to an insider, it is the closest professional golf has reached a real tour pros engaging in a fistfight in contemporary the past. Then Bryson made the choice to intensify his live commitment by becoming one of the most outspoken players in the league, defenders and ambassadors. While other live players remained largely silent about the tour war and attempted to concentrate on their own games, Bryson was unable to resist diving headfirst into every dispute and discussion. He defended LIV's enterprise model in public. He commended the Saudi Public Investment Fund to make investments in golf. He maintained that LIV was beneficial for the sport and that detractors were trapped in the past. Each statement seemed to one more jab at the PGA Tour, and everyone is still devoted to it. The PGA Tour players began mentioning Bryson in private discussions as the puppet of LIV or Saudi spokesperson, making fun of his change from someone who previously bemoaned everything on the PGA Tour to an individual who now behaved like LA was flawless and incapable of making mistakes. It was believed that Bryson had been purchased, that his $125 million deal came with a duty to be LIV's greatest supporter, and that he'd totally abandoned any ideals or authenticity that he may have had in the past. Moreover, then came what many believed to be the last straw, the instant that changed annoyance and frustration into sincere hatred. Rumors began in late 2024. Rumored that Bryson was actively attempting to enlist additional PGA Tour players to become a member of LIV, with a focus on younger players and volunteering to assist arrange for meetings with levy representatives and delegates from Saudi Arabia. A number of players attested to receiving communications from Bryson or those close to him, promoting LIV's advantages and attempting to persuade them to change their minds. For players on the PGA Tour, this crossed a line from individual choice to active sabotage. Bryson wasn't merely experiencing his own life and making his own decisions no longer. He was making an effort to weaken and harm the tour by attempting to steal its players. He had moved from defector from someone to a recruiter deciding on a personal career path to someone deliberately undermining the organization that had shaped his career feasible. Rory McIlroy, in a unique instance of public annoyance, made remarks to the media claiming that specific LIV players were now employed as salespeople for the Saudis, and that it was unsatisfactory to witness former coworkers become recruiters for a league that was attempting to demolish everything they had constructed collectively. Although Rory did not identify Bryson in particular, everyone was aware of what he was discussing. The hiring additionally, efforts place younger players in extremely uncomfortable positions. Consider yourself a 24-year-old PGA Tour player attempting to launch your career suddenly. Bryson DeChambeau, a significant champion and well-known celebrity, is sending you a message about how much better life is on LU and how you're creating an error by remaining faithful to the tour. For athletes who admired Bryson or admired his achievements, it produced an odd psychological strain and gave them the impression that they were being manipulated by a former admirer. The situation peaked ridiculousness at the Masters in 2025, where Bryson arrived sporting LIV-branded equipment during drills, provided interviews in which he discussed how he cherished the live experience and acted as though he was at Augusta in general to advertise his league instead of participate in one of the 4 major golf tournaments titles. Players on the PGA Tour who were at the Masters in particular to commemorate the custom and vie for a green jacket thought Bryson was being disrespectful to the competition and utilizing it as a venue for propaganda in real time. One seasoned athlete anonymously conversing with a golf according to a journalist, Bryson had turned into unbearable and that no one desired to be in his presence any longer because every interaction became a defense of LV or a critique of the PGA Tour. One more Bryson had burned, according to the player, so numerous bridges, even if the PGA Tour and LIV eventually united, and everyone ultimately resumed playing together. Bryson would remain persona non grata in the majority of locker rooms due to his handling of the whole circumstance. And this is what makes the entire circumstance so tragic and avoidable. Bryson DeChambeau lacked to become one of the most despised people in the world of professional golf. If he had departed for silently, LIV concentrated on his game, refrained from saying anything provocative regarding the PGA Tour, and displayed some humility and comprehension of the reasons behind his people were offended by his choice, and he could have kept at least friendly connections with his former coworkers. Athletes such as Dustin Johnson, who joined LIV as well, was able to avoid turning into paras by merely maintaining their putting your head down and avoiding the tour war private. However, Bryson was unable to accomplish that. Whether it's his disposition or his need for attention, his sincere conviction that he's correct in every way, or pressure from LIVV to be their most noticeable ambassador, he continued to make decisions that enraged individuals and set fire to connections that would never be fixed. Additionally, he is currently in a position where he is wealthy, prosperous, and more well-known than ever, but truly despised by the majority of those he used to share a locker room. Players on the PGA Tour are unable to no longer tolerate Bryson DeChambeau. Additionally, in actuality, he did it to himself. Each and every contentious remark, each live Eve defense, each recruiting attempt, each post on social media that seemed like it's all a middle finger to his previous tour, accumulated to produce a circumstance where these days, Bryson is among the most despised figures in the world of professional golf. Additionally, the saddest part is that this didn't have to happen.